This is Danielle Yawowiecka with the BBC News. Hello. President Putin has held a meeting with his security officials, including the Defence Minister Sergei Shoigu, as he tries to present an image of business as usual after a short-lived mutiny over the weekend. The sacking of Mr. Shoigu and the military chief of staff, General Valery Gerasimov, had been one of the demands of the head of the Wagner private army, Yevgeny Prigozhin. Mr. Putin has also given a national television address in which he claimed he'd let the mutiny go on as long as it did to avoid bloodshed. But the BBC's Russia editor Steve Rosenberg says the president is still playing catch-up.
Since his first TV address on Saturday, President Putin had remained silent about these tumultuous events, particularly about the agreement that was reached to end the standoff. A controversial agreement because although the president describes the organisers of the mutiny as criminals and traitors, as far as we know, the charges against Yevgeny Prigozhin are being dropped and he's free to go to Belarus, as far as we understand. So a controversial agreement, and people wanted to know what Vladimir Putin thinks about that, and he actually didn't address that point.
For his part, Yevgeny Prigozhin has posted an audio message on social media insisting he hadn't been trying to topple the government when he dispatched his men towards Moscow. He said they'd been angered by the Kremlin's threat to put them under the direct control of the Russian Defence Ministry. President Volodymyr Zelensky says the Ukrainian counter-offensive against Russian forces has made advances on all fronts, describing Monday as a happy day.
Our soldiers, our forefront positions, directions of the active operations at the front. Today, in all directions, our soldiers advanced forward, and it is a happy day. I wish the warriors more days like this. I visited Khortytsia Brigade, who distinguished themselves in the Battle of Bakhmut. Then our marine troops, very powerful. Thank you for efforts saving the lives of our soldiers. A lot of emotions. Had the honor to award our soldiers personally.
While he gave no details, pro-Russian commentators are saying that Ukrainian troops have crossed the Dnipro River and retaken the village of Dachi opposite the city of Kherson. If confirmed, this would take them closer to Crimea. Earlier, Ukraine's defence ministry said the village of Rivnopil in Donetsk had been recaptured. Sudan's paramilitary rapid support forces say they will observe a unilateral ceasefire in their conflict with the Sudanese army over the Muslim festival of Eid al-Adha. The announcement was made in an audio recording by the RSF leader Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo, known as Hamiti, who said the ceasefire would be in effect on Tuesday and Wednesday. General Hamiti also condemned abuses carried out against civilians, including those by his own forces. The RSF has been accused of being behind violations in Darfur. World News from the BBC. Provisional results from the presidential election in Sierra Leone suggest the incumbent Julius Maada Bio is on course to win. The Electoral Commission said he'd gained more than 55% of the vote ahead of his main rival Samura Kamara. The opposition candidate has rejected the Commission's results, which his spokesman said were cooked up. A United Nations human rights expert has called on Washington to close the US prison camp in Guantanamo Bay. Special Rapporteur Fionnuala Ní Aoláin, who's just taken part in the UN's first visit to the camp, described the treatment of detainees there as cruel and in breach of international law.
I recognise the enormous importance of the visit and the consequence it brings to the global elimination of the use of extraordinary rendition, torture, cruel, inhuman and degrading treatment, as well as arbitrary detention, with the recognition that these acts have no place in a rule of law-based society. I welcome the openness and the willingness of the US government to lead by example.
Around 30 detainees remain at the military facility on the island of Cuba, having been held without trial for more than 20 years. The President of Colombia has awarded medals to more than 80 people who took part in the operation to rescue 4 indigenous children lost in the Amazon jungle. Those recognised by Gustavo Petro include members of the military and indigenous communities. One medal was awarded to a military rescue dog. New research suggests efforts to halt deforestation are failing to meet targets agreed by world leaders. They pledged at the COP Environment Conference in 2021 to reverse deforestation by 2030. But the organisation Global Forest Watch says there was instead a 10% increase in the loss of older carbon-rich forests in the first full year after the deal was signed. BBC News.